Welcome to Think Big with Michael Zellner, powered by Platinum Jewelers. My guest today joining me for episode 112 is Craig Wiener. Craig is a financial analyst from Memphis, Tennessee. He graduated from Ridgeway High School in 1979, so he's a very young man. He received a scholarship to play basketball at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. He has about 100 clients throughout, I would guess, throughout the United States that he works with and handles money for. And I won't say the exact figure, but it's in the millions and millions of dollars. So he obviously is very good at what he does on a daily basis. During this podcast, we're going to talk about basketball. We're going to talk about money, some of the people that Craig's been really close to his entire life. And we're also going to talk about the late, great Dr. Edward Wiener, his father. There's so much to talk about that there's no doubt that we're going to have to split this up over a few different podcasts. And I'm really excited that Craig, our mutual friend, Romeo Kazan, reconnected us again after several years of not seeing each other. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So, I know it keeps you occupied, during the day and your love of basketball. What do you enjoy doing, during your off time, when you're not talking money or hoops?
I'm pretty boring, to be honest with you. Really, I guess, at this point in my life, spending time with my mother and my family. As I've told you, I have two very, very close friends. I have a lot of, at 62 years old, you have a lot of fucking friends.
Right.
And I have a lot of people that I consider quote unquote best friends. But my closest friends are Karen Carrier. I'm really blessed, honestly, to have her as, I guess, what I always call my bestest girlfriend. And these are strictly friends. And then my other friend is Joel Baines. And during basketball season, I spend a lot of time with Joel, going to Grizzlies games and Tigers games and doing that. And during not Grizzlies season, I probably spend more time with Karen. Going to dinner and going to movies, and going to just events. But really, I'm so passionate and dedicated to my work that I really spend an inordinate amount of time there. But I'm not unhappy about that. That's not like me going, I probably shouldn't, I really enjoy it. So it's not work. For me, it's as a technical analyst, it's a game of it's I'm trying to think of the word. It's trying to figure out. So every afternoon was when the data comes out that I analyze. It's like a puzzle. That's the word I was looking for. Every night, like when we're done here, the data will come out at about 5:00 every day. And I'll go right into basically, let's see what happened today. Let's see what really happened in the markets today. Okay. Besides all of the stuff that you hear, let's see what the supply and demand picture has decided for the day. So that's a long-winded answer to your question, but outside of that, I'm pretty boring. I love music. I just went and saw Louise Page. I just went and saw Marcella Simeon. The Sheiks. These are all people that I go to regularly. Being single, and not having any children affords me the ability to continue to, let that be a big piece of my life.
Absolutely. You grew up in East Memphis, went to Shady Grove Elementary, I believe the Memphis Hebrew Academy as a kid. What are a couple of, good memories from your younger years that still make you smile today when you think about them?
Well, memories from Shady Grove. First of all, let me just point out that I went to elementary school at Shady Grove from first grade to fourth grade. And then I'm pretty sure I'm right on this, but I'm not 100% sure. Busing started to be a real hot button. And my parents, basically like any parent really, were like, we're not going to send our son across the city. And so my fifth grade year, being Jewish, they enrolled me at, the Hebrew Academy, of which I think I obviously it was so long ago. I'm pretty sure I lasted the entire year, but I'm equally as sure that they asked my mother and father to please not send me back. Okay. Between me and Stanley Washer and Ronnie Landau, we were we were a disaster. So I went back to Shady Grove my sixth grade year. Shady Grove, I don't really remember a lot of stuff. I mean, I still am friends with people from Shady Grove. I don't see them obviously that often, but great relationships that when we do run into each other, it's all good, with the exception of a guy named Daring Moody. And this is the story I'm going to tell you about Shady Grove. When I was growing up and going to Shady Grove, I was always a big kid. People out there that don't know me, I'm 6'3", 220 pounds. And I was always one of the biggest kids in the class. But I also was blessed to be raised by a mother and father that gave me a great sense of humor, and also I hate to say it this way, but I was a good guy. And Daring Moody was basically the bully. And we were about the same size. I'll never forget him as long as I live, because he had a silver tooth right here in the front. And it was so crazy. One day we went into cafeteria, and there's a line like you had in the cafeteria, and apparently Daring had broken in front of all these girls. And these girls were going, Daring, you can't break line, and and one of them, I wasn't behind them, and one of them was like, Craig, get him out of line, and blah 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 blah. And so I walked up, to Daring, and I said, hey man, you can't be breaking line. And he turned and looked at me, and he goes, oh yeah? And I said, yeah, man, come on. I mean, come on, dude, we're in the cafeteria line. Will you get, I mean, and you're breaking in front of all these girls. And he was like, well, what are you going to do about it? And I really was, this was like the first time that I ever was honestly faced with a situation like this. And I really didn't know what to do, was the truth. But what happened was he said, what are you going to do about it? It stunned me for just a second. And I really was like, that's a good question in my head. And as I was doing that, he took a swing. And when he took a swing at me, my natural reaction was taking a swing back. I really believe that it was the very first time and one of the only times that I have ever like swung at somebody to hurt them, you know? And I knocked his ass out cold right in the cafeteria and immediately started crying. I won't forget that. And really kind of hyperventilating. It was so quick, and he was laid out, and the kids around us were like, way to go, Craig. They were like, way to go, Craig. And of course, I was like, sort of in shock, He eventually got up. Obviously, we both went to the office, and I just remember that I remember that I was crying, overwhelmingly crying, mainly because I couldn't really fathom what had just happened. Yeah. He was obviously not saying shit because whether I wanted to or not, I shut his ass up. And the kids came to my defense and explained to him what happened. He ended up getting thrown out of school. So, I mean, really, it's not the highlight, but I don't know if that's necessarily a highlight of my elementary experience, but it's one that I certainly will never fucking forget.
It's a good dang story. So
I knew you'd like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I like stories like that. A lot of the fun times you had as a kid were with the Elster family.
Yes.
I reached out to Stacy Elster Vogel, and she had this to say about you in those times. Quote, I can't think of a time that Craig has not been part of my life and the life of my brother Mark. And I grew up 3 doors from Craig beginning in 1963, when the two were just 3 years old. Those were the days of playing outside until dark, running through sprinklers, riding bicycles to school, and playing in ditches. We all did that and more. Craig and Mark were in school together at Shady Grove Elementary, Memphis Hebrew Academy, and Ridgeway High School. They were both students and big fans at the University of Tennessee, with Craig and his father both playing basketball for UT. We all were frankly fans and still are to this day. Unfortunately, Mark's life was cut short and he passed away over 30 years ago. Craig and I have talked about him so many times throughout these years. I imagine if Mark were still here, he and Craig would be making us all laugh, as they were always able to so often. My family has always been and always will be happy to call Craig a part of our family. Such a nice, touching email from Stacy. Later on, many of us moved to Eastwood Manor subdivision in East Memphis, off of Kirby, yep. Massey Lane. And, I got to know the family really well too. Stacy mentioned being UT fans, and they were such huge fans themselves, obviously. They named their dog Bottom. Mm-hmm. And any longtime UT fan will understand what that means and why they named the dog Bottom.
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about growing up with Mark, and also your relationship that is maintained over many years with Stacy and her husband, Scott.
Mark was a year older than me and a foot smaller. um, we were just, we were just best friends. It's really not complicated, honestly. It's not any more complicated than that. I mean, we literally, we shared so many things. It was a different time, I know that's sort of cliche, but cliche or not, it's the truth. It was a very, it was a different time. There were no cell phones. There were no computers. I mean, so, we were Jewish. Our fathers were both doctors. Our fathers were, thick as thieves. And our mothers were just as thick as thieves. I better make sure that, they don't hear that I say they were thick. My mom will just kill me. No, I'm just kidding. So Stacy was like Tracy's age, my sister's age, and then Brad was like the baby. And then Mark was like a year older than me. But we really just had, we just had fun. We did. We had, we played stupid ass games like kick the can and red light, green light. And I mean, that was our, that's what we did between the hours of getting out of school. Homework, obviously. And then there's like I guess a 2.5 hour window before I Love Lucy or, one of those dinner time comes. And, we were camaraderie. And we played kick the can, and it wasn't just Mark, it was Deborah Hirsch and the Hirsches, and it was my cousin Mark Fallon, and it was Stephen Manley, and it was Paul Wachowski. And, Jeff Roth he was a couple years older than us. He lived around the corner. And we just congregated as kids in the neighborhood and played just dumbass games. I mean, I don't know how to say it any other way. I mean, it was our way of having fun. There, like I said, there were no computers. Right. I mean, there were only 3 channels on television. I mean, that was it.
Remember when WPTY came and Channel 24 was like, oh my God, we have a 4th channel. It's the greatest thing ever.
It was like, right. Yeah, I do remember that. I mean, and I remember many nights we would stay up, and you really stayed up late when the American, the national anthem came on, and then the damn freaking Indian with the, would come on. So it was a different time.
Are you shopping for a new watch, an engagement ring, any kind of jewelry at all? What's up, Memphis? This is Jaren Jackson Jr. from the Grizzlies, encouraging you all to shop where I shop, Platinum Jewelers here in Memphis. Platinum Jewelers has a big selection of earrings, stockable rings, luxury watches, necklaces, bracelets, really whenever you need. 9387 Poplar next to Fresh Market in Germantown. So if you need anything jewelry related, go to my spot, Platinum Jewelers.
It was a different time. And I think it's funny because when you were reading Stacy's email, I think the funniest thing is that she didn't bring up Rudy. There was a dog in the neighborhood, and he basically was a stray. He wasn't a stray, I shouldn't say that, but he belonged to, I can't remember who he belonged to, but he was he was a scary dog to us, as kids. He was, it's funny because now he's beautiful. He was like a brindle, you know, and really wiry and really muscular. But he would nip at you, you know, and whoever he belonged to, it wasn't any of us. He would routinely get out, and Uncle Alvin was like, you know, legendary for like yelling. He'd be like, Rudy's out, and like all the kids that were playing, we knew like to be on guard because he would be. I don't think he ever bit anybody bad, you know, but he was scary, you know. So we were like, when we heard that Rudy was out, which Uncle Alvin would sound the alarm, we would scamper up trees and shit like that. And we to this day, me and Stacy, and of course her awesome husband Scott, you know, he obviously knows the legend of Rudy, and we every once in a while we'll be at dinner and talking and something, and all of a sudden one of us will just go, Rudy.
That's great.
And then, you know, the last, you know, I wanted to continue on Mark just a little bit. I mean, unfortunately, it's been so freaking long. It's almost stunning. When I go see my father at the cemetery, and you know, I passed by Mark's grave and Uncle Alvin's, and I'm still just sort of stunned that it's been 30 years plus. It's just it's a weird feeling. It's definitely a weird feeling. And you know, the last several years we really didn't communicate that much because he had gone on to the Air Force. It's another story of a guy going to the Air Force this tiny, and going into the military this tiny. And when I saw him, I almost didn't recognize him because he had bulked all up. He was still tiny, but he was like muscular.
Right.
But, and, you know, and then we were really blessed, our family. When my mother and father decided to downsize, we were really blessed because Scott and Stacy bought my mother and father's house. And so we sort of kind of have kept it in the family a little bit, because we are still so very close, very, very close. I mean, you know, Scott, Scott's one of those people that whenever I hang out with him, and there's a lot of people like this, whenever I hang out with him, but as I was saying at the beginning of this, I have such a small circle that I really stay with. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know, but it is what it is.
Right.
Scott's one of those people that when we hang out, which is often, fortunately, I'm always like, I need to hang out with this guy more often. This is, you know, he's just such a great guy. And I can't really say that about Stacy because she's like my little sister. I mean, she's like literally my little sister. So, but yeah, it's a very sad thing that happened.
You know, you and I talked off air last week about, you know, you called them Uncle Alvin and Aunt Laverne just like we did.
Correct.
You know, I told you that, you know, my dad and Alvin went to podiatry school together. You know, Alvin to me, and I have very good memories of him, he was sort of larger than life. You know, you just brought up something that made me remember when you talked about Rudy. I remember Alvin killed a snake in our backyard that was on the steps going into our house. And I don't know if my dad was afraid to kill it or what, but I remember somehow Alvin killed the snake. This is when we were little kids.
And he didn't even blink.
Yeah, right. And I was just like, it was funny. And he was such a funny guy. And Mark to me, it was like sort of a big older brother. Mark took care of our dog Bagel when we went on family trips a few times. I was telling you, Mark taught me how to play tennis. November 30th, 1992, when he died, was like a punch in the gut to me. And I hadn't seen him for so long. And just several months earlier, he had come in town. A group of us had gotten together up at Dr. Watson's, which ended up in the bottom line.
Doc Watson's.
Right, Doc Watson's. Yes, Doc Watson's. And I got to spend probably 30 minutes with him, just talking to him and catching up. And that was about 6 months before he passed away. And he did a spot on impression of my dad yelling down the street for us to come home. Family larger than life. Three good looking kids, Mark, Stacy, and Brad, just such, outgoing, good personalities. And, they got that from their mom and dad and their grandparents too, I'm sure. So, I have such fond memories of those times with that family too, growing up.
And Mark is, like I said, it was fascinating because, he loved sports. He was really small. And he basically figured out a sport that he could compete regardless of whether he was, small or tall or big or anything. There's only a couple of those you can do that in.
Right.
He couldn't do it in swimming because he wasn't long enough. I guess golf and tennis are like my good friend Steve Gubin will show you that, you equal that the playing field, of having bigger physical attributes. And he absolutely was an incredible tennis player. Not just an okay tennis player, a very good tennis player.
Yeah, if it wasn't for him, I never would have pursued tennis. And I'm sure that I never would have gone on and ended up taking lessons later on and ended up playing in high school, Ridgeway. He literally taught me how to play at the Jewish Community Center to where, I was a good high school tennis player.
Yeah. He was, it's like I said, I can't really, it's really hard for me to, kind of even, the good thing is it's been so long that I don't think about it.
Sure.
The bad thing is that you wonder why God takes, these good people, but once again, another cliche, God works in mysterious ways. So,
Absolutely. Let's talk about basketball a little bit. You grew up doing drills all the time in your driveway, and you kept a book about those drills. You worked your ass off to be as good as you could be with the talents that you had. You've described yourself as, at that time, as, quote, big, strong, handled the ball well, couldn't shoot. I didn't suffer from white man's disease. I had no problem dunking the ball, unquote. You also said you were, quote, a good athlete, just not a shooter, great at going to the basket and getting fouled. That's how I scored. I was 90% from the free throw line, unquote. What do you believe that made your game so special? Because you had to obviously, improvise, overcome, adapt, to a lot of different things that you knew that you didn't have. And what made that different from a lot of players?
Well, just like today, nothing has really changed in basketball. Scoring sells, and it was not from a lack of trying. I can assure you of that. But for whatever reason, I just was not. I was not blessed with the ability to really shoot from the outside. I guess I was blessed with the ability to recognize that. Okay.
Right.
And I love the sport of basketball. I almost, one of the things I didn't tell you was I was a really good football player, and I was big. Now I never played in high school, but I played all the way through, and I played defensive end. And I was you did not run around my end. Okay. But at a critical time in my life, like between 9th grade and 10th grade, I guess a critical time in my athletic life, I went to the University of Tennessee's like all sports camp. And Ernie Grunfeld was at the camp. He was, I guess, a freshman at Tennessee, maybe. And my father had a relationship with Ernie. I'm not sure if you know that, but my father was
I did not know that.
very instrumental in getting Ernie Grunfeld to go to University of Tennessee. My father was best friends with Ray Mears and Stu Aberdeen, the coaches at the time. And when they were going after, I'm kind of digressing a little bit here, but there's a reason. I'll get back on point.
You're good.
I promise. My father was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, and Ernie was from Forest Hills, and which is in Brooklyn. And they really wanted him bad. He didn't speak hardly any English. His parents spoke no English. They were from Romania. And they basically called my dad up and said, Ed, we want this kid. He's Jewish. He's at Forest Hills. He's unreal. We think we have a really good shot at him, but we need we think that if we can get an interpreter, a Romanian interpreter in New York, we think that we can impress his mother and father enough by doing that to actually get this kid. Can you help us? And of course, my father, his blood is orange. So he gets on the phone, he gets a Romanian interpreter, and Ray Mears and Stu Aberdeen, they were the only coaches that, flew up physically. There are a lot of coaches that came to the Grunfeld house, but none of them came armed with a Romanian interpreter so that his mother and father could actually understand. And that meant a lot.
It's the little things.
It meant a lot to Ernie that they went out of their way to do this.
Right.
And it's absolutely one of the reasons, if not the reason, that Ernie Grunfeld went to Tennessee. And you can just continue down there and say, if Ernie Grunfeld doesn't go to Tennessee, the greatest player in the history of Tennessee basketball does not go to Tennessee. And that's, of course, Bernard King.
Right.
So anyway, in my ninth, I went to University of Tennessee they had this like all-star camp. You went and you played every sport. And Ernie was like a freshman. And the reality is that I told Ernie, he's like, are you going to play football? Because he had this relationship with my dad. And I was like, yeah, I really kind of like football. I was leaving MUS and going to Ridgeway. Okay. And I actually went out for the Ridgeway football team. And I actually, as a 10th grader, was starting in practice, at defensive end. I was probably in 10th grade, I was 6 feet tall, and probably 180, 90 pounds. I was a big kid. And, it was one of those strokes of whatever you want to call it. Ernie looked at me and he said, if you want to play major college sports, he said, my advice to you is to focus on one sport. And, I decided to focus on basketball. And I actually had to go in to the Ridgeway football coach, who was awesome. I swear to God, I can't remember his name.
Was this before Sonny Winters, or
it was Sonny Winters? Okay. It was absolutely Sonny Winters.
Okay.
He was absolutely awesome. And all of the coaches, football coaches, were great, the assistants and everything. And I had to walk in there and look at him and go, man, I don't think I'm going to play. I think I'm going to just stick with basketball. And I really focused my attention 100% on basketball. And they were cool with it. They weren't happy, but they got it. And from there on, I just focused on basketball. I got a lot of, my father was Ed Wiener, was a two-time All-American at the University of Tennessee that could shoot, by the way. And his advice was not critical of my shooting. His advice was, if you can handle the ball, then you will have a spot. You will be able to be valuable to the team. And more importantly, in the same vein, if nobody can take the ball from you, then you bring a lot of value to the table.
Right.
And so in 10th grade, I had to sit out my sophomore year because I transferred from MUS to Ridgeway. And, I spent an inordinate amount of time I'll be, on my handle. Old school would be like on ball handling. Right. But if I want to be like John Morant, I worked on my handle.
Right.
And I worked hard, crazy hours. The book you're talking about was, I had these little, they were like notebooks like this. And inside of them, there were like 15 drills that were 15 ball handling drills that I would do every day, okay, in my driveway. And the rules were really simple. I had to do like, figure eight. If anybody out there knows what a figure eight is, dribbling, okay, you had to do 10 figure eights in a row without messing up before you could check it off. And so when you are working on when you're working like that, the first, 6 months, you're out there for fucking hours, okay? Because it's literally impossible to do it without fucking up. But you stay disciplined, and you stay disciplined. And that was the key. And then especially the left-handed stuff. I did everything I did with the right, I did with the left. Wow. So like for the first I mean, honestly, it was probably for the first year. I mean, I was out there, by my senior year, these drills would take me seriously 45 minutes to do. Okay. My sophomore year, it would take me 2.5 hours
Wow.
to do it because I was just very, very disciplined at that. And because of that, um, um, there's a lot of things that came out of that. First of all, nobody take the ball from me. Okay. Second of all, I learned to dribble with my head up because you had to. And so what that did, I have excellent peripheral vision that I got from my father. So what that did, that allowed me to see the court. In other words, I could get a rebound. I'd get a rebound. A good example of it was like the other night in the Grizzlies game. Before I say this, I want to make sure that, people realize I'm just trying to give an example. You saw like John Morant. This is not a comparison. Okay. You saw John Morant get a rebound and look up and immediately throw a full court pass to Santi Aldama for a dunk. Well, I was big in high school for high school. I got a lot. I mean, I averaged like 10 rebounds a game in high school. So I didn't even play really guard. They just played me whatever position. But I would get rebounds. I'd get the rebound and I'd come down and unlike other guards that would look down to make sure that somebody doesn't steal it from them, I was immediately looking up and I was coming down the court with confidence. So I was seeing all the players, where they were going.
Right.
And that allowed me to basically become very skillful at they call it the little things that you don't see, the Shane Battier, you know what I mean? It was like, it was the little things that I did that allowed me to become the player that was wanted, for lack of a better way of putting it. Like I said, I never could shoot. I was absolutely a streak shooter, meaning I worked so hard to try to be a shooter that every once in a while, the stars lined up and I could reel off, 6 in a row. And I was as surprised as anyone. But mainly, it was my skill of getting the players that could shoot and could score and get them the ball where they wanted it.
Right.
Especially the big men, especially the big guys. When you can dump that ball into those big guys, when you bounce past that ball into those big guys, they don't ever forget it, ever. It's the one reason I got to be picked on. I mean, it's the reason I was picked on teams by playing pickup at the downtown YMCA, which was like the most remarkable pickup games. Penny Hardaway playing there. And Kenny Brown, who's a legend in Memphis, played at Hamilton High School and then went on to play at Texas A&M. Graduated high school in '76, so he's several years older than me. But I mean, I was so good at it that, when playing in those kind of games, it's all about winning. So you stay on the court.
Right. So
if you went to play at 4:00 after work, the key was creating a team that played like 11 straight games, Kenny, even though I wasn't the best player out there by any stretch, he knew that if he picked me on his team, he knew that I would get him the ball so that he would score.
Right.
And so, like, you know, that's really that's the only reason I got that's the only reason I achieved the level of success that I had. So, you know, which was, I mean, I've done a few things. I played all over the world, and I played in the NCAA tournament. I didn't play in the NCAA tournament, but I've got a certificate from, you know, being a part of the University of Tennessee. So, yeah.
Late 70s, 1978, you're a junior, Ridgeway High School, Ridgeway Auditorium, Ridgeway Gymnasium, excuse me. You're the point guard. Big Bad Bolton High School comes to Ridgeway one night to play. This isn't just a regular game. I mean, these guys are the reigning state champions.
It's a beatdown.
Yeah. Joe Branch, iconic coach, led by, ended up being future point guard at Memphis, what was then Memphis State, Otis Jackson, who's a mutual friend of ours. You know, tell us a little bit about that game and that night and what happened.
You know, I'll start off this story just by telling you that once again, I was so blessed growing up, not for reasons that people might think. My mother and my father. My father was from Brooklyn, New York. He wasn't scared of shit. Okay. And he instilled that in me. You know, the other thing, I know this is not exactly, I'm going to get to that game, but the other thing that was really, really critical was I was raised by a father that never understood the concept of racism. We didn't, you know, he didn't. I mean, he went through so much crap at Tennessee, not because of racism, but because of being Jewish. Okay. But he raised his kids, and particularly me, when it pertained to sports, to it's not something we saw. My best friend in high school was Michael Brooks, who went to Melrose, literally my best friend. And so I was never fearful, okay? And I never looked at people, and still don't, as black and white. Can I see that they're black and white? Well, of course I can see that they're black and white, but it doesn't mean anything to me, okay? Now, Bolton comes in, and, you know, I don't know why we fucking played them, but we did. We were AA and they were single A. And they had Otis Jackson, they had Cecil Dow, who went on to Ole Miss. I think Sylvester Gray, it might not have been Sylvester. I know he played there.
A little bit later, he played there, yeah.
It was somebody else that they had their whole team was insane, okay? And they played us at Ridgeway because we were due at 2A and they were single A, you know? And the craziest thing was the fear on my team's face when we walked out to play. And, I was like, I was basically looking around and going, hey man, we were actually pretty good. We weren't as good as they were, but there was really no reason for us. I didn't feel there was any reason for us to be scared, right? But our team was just scared to freaking death. They were shaking in their boots. And you played 4 quarters. And I mean, after the first quarter, we were probably down like 20, let's just say 26-8 or something like that. And I mean, it became obvious to me. I mean, it was like a hot potato on our side. Right. Nobody wanted the ball. People were like, "Hey, you over here, get it away from me." And I was like, "This is bullshit." And I knew I couldn't shoot, but I knew nobody else was going to shoot. So I just started yanking it. I caught it, and I'd take 2 dribbles, and I was yanking it. And then Bolton started going, wait a minute, and you know what? It was one of those magical moments where I was miraculously hitting these shots. Right. So Bolton shifted their defense, and I was still able to basically score. And I don't really remember how many points I had. Probably, I really don't remember, but it was probably like 27 points. What I do remember was the final score of the game was, I don't remember the exact score, but I remember the final score of the game was like 82 to like 38. Okay. And I had 27 points. And the only reason that I had 27 points was because if our team shot 40 times, the entire team, I shot like 25 of those shots because nobody else would shoot. And after the game, this Otis will tell you this, if he remembers, it was just so long ago. I remember it because that was where my relationship with Otis really first started. He was a senior. He was by far the leader on their team. And I'll never forget him coming up to me. And I was a junior. I'll never forget him coming up to me after the game, shaking hands and stuff. And, just whispering in my ear, like, way to play, dude. And it meant the world. It meant the world to me because, older players like Otis, Michael Wilson at Manassas, these people, they were larger than life to me. Okay. They were the guys that when I picked up the paper in the morning, they were the guys that were like, in the headlines. And it meant the world. Michael Wilson did the same thing to me in a district tournament game that we played. And it gave me confidence to continue on the path that I was going on. It made me comfortable, like you're doing the right thing. Keep doing this. And and me and Otis have been friends ever since, really. So yeah, they kicked our ass, but hell, they kicked everybody's ass.
Yeah, they did.
I mean, it wasn't just us. I mean, we were just the pussies, really. We were like, I was looking at my teammates like going, really? I can't even shoot. And you can shoot and you're afraid to shoot. I mean, so,
I owe it to Otis. You and I talked about this off air that, if it wasn't for Otis coaching the Bucks at the JCC when, I was a senior and I didn't play, I sucked, Elster, Namias, Adam Brown, Mendelson, those guys were really good and they started. I never played because, I wasn't good. But after the season was over with, I told you, I took basketball lessons from him and he taught me how to shoot. And so it wasn't for Otis, you and I never, within a few years of that, late in the late 80s, would have never connected off the court, on the court, playing pickup games at the center together. And, that's how our relationship started then, because
Yep.
that guy taught me how to shoot the ball.
Yep. He's like I said, really good guy.
Yeah.
And when I tell you, when you're a younger player at any level, okay, seriously, I mean, you see it today in the NBA. Okay, when a Damian Lillard, okay, comes up to a John Morant after the game and whispers in his ear something special, something like, great game, you played your ass off, keep doing what you're doing. The amount of confidence that you get, even though you got your ass kicked, the amount of confidence that you get, it skyrockets, because somebody like John Morant is smart enough to know who Damian Lillard is.
Sure.
And
70 the other night.
And Chris Paul and Kyrie Irving and Steph Curry, all of these point guards that are older than him, he may sit there and talk smack to them, but it means the confidence builders that those guys give, and they do, because they had the same thing happen to them.
Sure.
When they were coming, they had the John Stocktons, and they had the I can't think of some of the other point guards, but I mean, the Rod Stricklands, the Mahmoud Al-Ruth, they had all those guys telling them,
Right.
Chauncey Billups, and those are the guys that told them, keep going, you're going in the right direction. So it meant a lot to me. Still does. It still means a lot to me today. And I try to do the same thing. And I've learned that from those guys, and my father. Actually, I learned that more from those guys than my father. Okay. But I learned it from those guys. And as I went on in my career, I made it a point to always look at the younger players, and let them know, yep, keep going. You're just don't change a thing, so you have to do that.
Speaking of the confidence that you had, after your junior year, you along with Bubba Luckett, from Memphis, and I think you said maybe one other player, I can't remember exactly. You got invited. Okay. Yeah. You guys got invited to the BC All-Star basketball camp, and what you said is a very hot Milledgeville, Georgia. You're just one of 150 players invited to what was one of the top all-star camps in the country. For anyone who's a longtime college basketball, pro basketball fan, some of the big time players were there. Isaiah Thomas, Dale Ellis, who, played with UT, Ralph Sampson, Steve Stepanovich, Sam Bowie, Clark Kellogg, Dominique Wilkins, Antoine Clark, James Worthy, and many more. You called your dad to tell him, there are 150 players, your dad, and guess what number I'm ranked? And you said, I'm number 150. He said to you, quote, go do your thing, unquote. You said that you knew you weren't a scorer and you didn't need to score, Craig. That ended up being a pretty amazing week for you, wasn't it?
It was an amazing week. I'm sweating right now, just with the memory of Milledgeville, Georgia, in the middle of the summer. It was that hot. He said some encouraging words, sort of like that, just go do your thing. The one thing that I clearly recognized was there was just, unlike when I was at Ridgeway, where I sort of had to score, you know. Um, I didn't even have to shoot in this group. And so I was able to focus 100% on doing the things that I knew that I could do as good or better than most. One, not letting my man score. Number one, I was a really good athlete. As I said before, I did not suffer from white man's disease. I was deceptively quick and strong. And so, my job became not let my man score. And then my other job was to, it was a mix of things. It was a mix of things like, take away the beautiful shot of John Conchar and you have me. It's the steal, the rebound that I tracked down as a 6'3" guard, and getting the ball to the guys that actually could score, and all of not all of them, but pretty much all of them at this camp could, and that was one of the, I think that was one of the problems that some of my friends had that were invited. I don't know, because we really weren't. First of all, it was a long time ago. And second of all, I don't really know, because I wasn't attending like their games,
Right.
But I'd imagine, their games, here in Memphis were completely predicated on scoring. I mean, that was it. I mean, they certainly weren't known for their defense. They certainly weren't known for getting other people the ball. I mean, the plays were all designed to get them the ball.
Right.
Okay. So when you're thrown into a group like that, all of a sudden, my really close friends that I went there with from Memphis, all of a sudden they're competing. Their skill is competing with the skill of Isaiah Thomas, of Adale Ellis. They are competing. Their strong skill set is competing with those guys' strong skill set. I mean, it's no surprise that their write-ups would be not like mine ended up being, because mine ended up being, we don't know who the fuck this guy is, right? To, hey, this dude plays hard defense and gets everybody the ball.
Right.
We haven't seen him shoot, but he checks off all those boxes. And I'd imagine that my friends had in that group of players that we just mentioned, they had a hard time getting their shots off.
Sure.
Because you didn't have an entire team setting picks all over the place for you, so they were sort of, they had their hands tied, so it was a lucky break. It was really a lucky break, really, it was. So,
Speaking of Bubba Luckett, I reached out to him and asked him, about, back in those days. He said, quote, "I would say no matter what gym we would play in over the summer, Craig was the personality of the group. He knew everybody and always played with confidence," which you just talked about, confidence, unquote. That confidence is huge. Your friend Elliot Perry used to wear that on his knee pad. It had those words, confidence is the key. I'll never forget that on him wearing that on his knee pad. First of all, tell us a little about, your relationship with Bubba. And, I guess part of me probably thinks he probably knows a little bit, but where did that confidence come from inside of you?
Oh, I think that first of all, Bubba is, he's one of those people. He's one of those people that will always be friends. We don't see each other that often. And Jerry Martin is the same way, and Brett Bolton is the same. All of these guys, Hubie Smith, all these guys, we were so close, and we were the White Brigade. I'm just kidding. The confidence that he's alluding to, first of all, that's sweet of him to say. He was brutal. Let me just say that, first of all, because I had to guard the best player on any team we played for 2 years. And he was just a bitch, because there are two reasons he was a bitch. One, they would set so many picks that it was almost like Golden State when you watch all the picks they set for Curry.
Right.
It was you watch Golden State and you watch Dylan Brooks try to guard Steph Curry, and then you watch Dylan Brooks try to get through like 4 different picks. Okay. And Bubba was similar. And not only similar was he was guarding him that way. He also could, and this is going to be hard for people to believe, but he also could shoot just as good as Steph Curry. Okay. I mean, obviously he's not Steph Curry, but his shot was that good. So like, if you just couldn't get completely around that pick and they got in the ball, which they did, and he let it go, it's gone. It's good. It was good. And it was, I don't want to say that it was frustrating. It was a challenge. It was a challenge that, if you're a player with my mentality, if you're a player with my mentality, then you accept that challenge. Once again, I'm not comparing myself to Dylan Brooks, but if you watch Dylan Brooks play, if you watch Tony Allen play, they take an immense amount of pride in their ability to play defense.
Right.
And I knew that was like one of my strongest assets. So playing an Otis Jackson or playing against a Bubba Luckett or Jerry Martin or a Brett Bolton or Hubie Smith or any of these guys, I looked at it the same way Dylan Brooks looked at it. So I had a lot of confidence. There's another thing I had. I was a lot bigger and stronger than these guys. You don't know that now, but back then, these guys were skinny. Okay, I wish I was, but I was never considered skinny. So I was a big, strong, fast-moving guy. And so I had the physical attributes to cause these guys problems. I had the physical attributes at these camps that we were talking about to cause players like Isaiah Thomas problems. I was 2 inches taller than Isaiah. He's 6'1". I was 2 inches taller and probably had him by 40 pounds.
Right.
And he was a blur. Okay. But, they let us be physical in those camps, and, I was, because it was the only thing I could do,
Right.
So, amazingly great years with Bubba. To this day, whether he considers it or not, or, he's remains. I consider him still one of my great friends of all time.
During that entire week, you told me that you guys were playing 3 games a day, super hot gym, taking salt pills like crazy.
It was crazy, the salt pills.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
I don't think I remember taking salt pills except for that week, literally.
You said to me that no one took the ball from you, while you're guarded by some of the best in the country. You just mentioned you had to play against Isaiah Thomas, and you played lockdown defense on the number 1 point guard, coming out of high school at that time in the country, Isaiah. Like you talked about, you have the ability to get the ball to people, to get them open, to get them to be able to get their shot off, whether they were a set shooter, whether they were going around the pick, you had the ability to do it. And, the players there love playing with you. The coaches loved having you on the team, especially since you went in there in your mind, you were 150 out of 150. You undoubtedly earned the respect from a lot of people left there when you left there. How did that make you feel?
Surprised. Surprised. I mean, sports like basketball, are players that have my skill set are not usually lauded or rewarded. We're not in the headlines, So to have a great write-up coming out of there was surprising. I mean, I don't really put a smile on my face, I guess. Just, like, oh, wow. Okay. That was cool. That's a cool little blip. So, but,
I have so much more that I want to talk to you about. And this isn't going to end up being 2 podcasts, right? This is going to go 3, because I just can see I have so much more basketball I want to talk to you about, and definitely got to get and talk about your family, your dad, and everything else. So I'd love to definitely have you come back for, part 2 in a few weeks, if that works for you.
I'm all yours, bud. I mean, this has been great. This has been great. I mean, really, this is cathartic. I can't wait to talk about some of the other things that we've sort of talked about. And I think you're going in and out.
Yeah, my screen froze up there for a second.
But I look forward to it. And I do. We do have a long history, and I do have a lot of other freaking stories.
Yes, you do. I have much more to ask.
I can't believe we have the Deary Moody story. It's like,
that's funny. That's funny.
But,
well, dude, I appreciate you coming on today. This has been awesome. Enjoyed talking to you. I love talking basketball as it is, but talking to someone who I really like and appreciate and respect makes it even more special. So thanks for coming on, and I'll see you back here, in just a few weeks.
Sounds good, Michael.
All right,
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you.